As a highly skilled psychologist, he was always passionate about his work. One day, the main character must receive numerous patients of all ages. One day, he welcomed a very special guest. Although her background and appearance were quite ordinary, she was actually the mother of the female protagonist. However, this oblivious young man was unaware of this fact. After divorcing her unfaithful husband, she came here to receive psychological counseling from the psychologist. It wasn't because she felt sad, but because she found herself feeling strange. While most people were overwhelmed with sorrow after a divorce, she felt completely normal. In fact, she even felt much more at ease. After receiving psychological treatment, she felt more at ease and lighter in spirit. However, the chatty nature of the doctor made her exclaim that if he was her daughter's boyfriend, she would forbid it right from the start. The male protagonist also found the auntie in front of him very enjoyable to talk to and to his taste. They continued to banter back and forth, unaware that in the future, something unbelievable would happen between them. As the saying was, the shortest path to the heart was through the stomach. So how would it be if two people come together through meals? In front of everyone was Zoe, a well-known content producer. As a modern woman, Zoe wasn't afraid of financial independence, even though she had a boyfriend to pick her up every day. Zoe was strong enough to be independent and take care of herself. On the other hand, Hae-kyung was a skilled psychologist. When one door closed, another one opened. God took away the poverty and left him with such handsome looks that they could make anyone swoon. However, his mannerisms were rather peculiar and he was quite reserved. Two people accidentally met each other on a flight to Jeju Island. They thought that after this flight, they would pass each other by like two strangers. But in the days that followed, somehow the two people would always accidentally run into each other. After a few chance encountered, they became friends who had dinners together. The two people simply went out to eat together, without interfering with each other's personal lives. Both harmonized in a strange way. The humorous games started to appear when Zoe wanted to invite Hae-kyung to be a guest on her show. Afterwards, Hae-kyung firmly refused. Then the two of them combated each other with emails that were neither short nor long. Let's continue to watch the film to see what happens next. The common saying was that you only knew whether the quilt has lice when was in bed. Anyone who didn't know the story would see that Zoe was a girl who had it all. Zoe had almost all: wealth, love, career. However, when this door closed, it was also convenient to suddenly trap her head. Perhaps God arranged things so that Zoe could not have it all, as the rumors claimed. On a day with no clouds or rain, Zoe decided to finish her work early, so she could discreetly fly to be with her beloved. She wanted to have a super surprise for her lover's birthday. Because she didn't know the situation, Zoe decided to take a big risk. She wanted to make a vlog to commemorate this memorable birthday. On the way there, Zoe was gleefully eager, looking forward to the moment of seeing her lover's surprised expression. Who would have thought that Zoe herself would be shocked and bewildered? At first, Zoe was the one who secretly came to her lover to give him a big surprise. Inhanan ta litra licho ko mot bat ngo kantaan. As soon as Zoe arrived, she noticed that her beloved and another woman was kissing together, instead of beating up her soon-to-be ex-lover until he saw his ancestors. Zoe only gently gave him a ticket to the trauma department at the Central Institute. Even more shocking, the rainy girl turned out to be the flight attendant on the Zoe flight she just got on. After being beaten up and thrown ashore, he begged Zoe to come inside and have an in-person conversation. What he said were like 1,000 knives stabbing into Zoe's tiny heart. At that moment, her mother's words echoed in Zoe's ears. If your lover dared to cheat on you, you should cut off that part of him. However, if you wanted to make dumpling filling with turnip, it needed to be finely chopped. As for him, it's not even worth talking about. Just let it go. Zoe decided to leave it for him to use gradually. After scolding for a while, she turned around and left to give way to him for that girl. Then he took a bottle of rice water and turned around without bothering to look back. Despite the ex-boyfriend's pursuit and the green tea girl running after to create suspense, Zoe didn't care at all. Finally, he decided to return to her side, leaving Zoe alone and desolate. Zoe tried to pretend that she was fine, but deep inside she was really sad. But then there came a time when Zoe could no longer restrain her emotions. Sitting inside, Hae-kyung could see the expressions on her face and could guess what she truly thought. Because he was a famous psychologist. Not only that, he had also been hurt because of his first love. Due to those wounds, even until now Hae-kyung has never had a serious relationship. Those present at the restaurant all cheered for Hae-kyung to run outside and heal Zoe's wounds. However, when Hae-kyung arrived, it was already too late. Hae-kyung decided to get into a taxi and follow Zoe. Meanwhile, Joey wanted to stand by the seaside to enjoy the refreshing breeze. However, the fierce wind made Zoe disoriented and wobbly in the sea. When Hae-kyung saw this, he suspected that Zoe tried to end her own life. As it was, one person ran swiftly towards the other, while the other hurriedly tried to avoid them. As a result, Hae-kyung accidentally jumped into the big sea. Realizing that the man in front of her was the one who on the same flight with her, Zoe quickly pulled him up. Although the person did not have any visible injuries, he seemed to react quite strangely. Hae-kyung always said there was a person wearing white standing next to Zoe. He also affirmed that that was her friend. As they were talking, a wave suddenly came and caused Hae-kyung to fall into an unconscious state. Seeing that, Zoe quickly took him to the emergency hospital. Luckily, Hae-kyung only had to sew 10 stitches, but his mind was still intact. As soon as Hae-kyung was conscious afterwards, he realized that he had missed his flight. He hurriedly arranged his belongings to continue unfinished plans. However, his clothes were now covered in sand and blood. Zoe hurriedly took home other clothes for him. The outfit looked quite colorful but quite rather trendy. Zoe wanted to compensate for Iki-young, but he didn't accept the hospital fees nor the airline ticket. Zoe had no choice but to persuade Iki-young to see him off at the airport. Consider that as her sincere apology. But Iki-young didn't know that Zoe was actually a stylish playgirl. The decision to let her take him to the airport was probably his biggest mistake. Since she had been there many times before, Zoe knew this route well. Not only that, it was so late at night and so the road was also empty. Adding to Zoe's passion for speed, she drove quickly to the airport. In the blink of an eye, Iki-young was already at the airport. Despite the fact that Iki-young's flight was scheduled for the next day, Zoe lied and said it was convenient to bring him here. Before their parting, Iki-young gave Zoe some advice. Once you broke up, let each go their own way. Zoe hesitated sitting in the car. She didn't know where she should go or where to come back. At this moment, a street vendor suddenly knocked on the door, causing her to startle. Thinking of her ex-boyfriend, Zoe suddenly felt melancholic. Every time she felt extremely painful. Zoe felt bad when she experienced the feeling of being left alone hungrily. Upon hearing the knocking door, Zoe thought it was the traveling street vendor. While enthusiastically opening the door, Zoe noticed an injured butterfly at the entrance. Because he was moved by Zoe's words while they were still at the hospital, Iki-young decided to return. Not only that, he also knew that she was so hungry, so he wanted to invite her to dinner with him. But it was already late and everywhere closed. Iki-young just wanted to find a restaurant in the house, but Zoe decisively stopped by the road to try the new flavored restaurant. Each person called for a delicious and high-quality bowl of rice like a 5-star restaurant. Each person enjoyed the meal very much with their own different tastes. After eating and drinking, both of them followed owner's recommendation to go to a nearby guest house. I didn't know until I arrived that it was the house of the two restaurant owners. The owners also misunderstood them as a married couple. They kept talking until they agreed to give us separate rooms. Zoe couldn't sleep and went outside to have a little oatmeal vitamin drink. After drinking for a while, she then jumped into the swimming pool even though the pool didn't have a single drop of water. Iki-young heard the sound and came out to see what kind of silly thing she was doing. He decided to ignore her, but when seeing her lying on the ground, so I turned back to confide in her. Anyway, at this point, for Zoe, there was nothing more painful than being heartbroken. The next day, Iki-young woke up early and went out to buy things. Conveniently, he also bought some hangover remedy for Zoe. She promised to meet him again when she returned to thank him. It was amazing how he gave her such a hard-to-remember time and place that made her keep thinking and couldn't figure it out. There was an additional condition that if the song reached top 1 trending, they would definitely meet again. After that, Iki-young came back to go far away while Zoe also prepared to fly back. The first thing Zoe did was to buy a bunch of distilled water. She drank while watching the videos she had recorded before. The next day she still happily and went to work, rushed to meet the deadline. The boss assigned Zoe an important task. She must invite the street hero who was a famous psychologist to collaborate happily. Because she didn't know Iki-young's name, she also didn't expect the person she was about to meet again to be him, who had helped her. He used to be a blogger live streaming to share about food and drink. Due to the captivating voice and humorous content, it made everyone fall asleep easily. Luckily, since he was handsome, he was accepted. There were also many invitations, but he rejected, so the boss wanted Zoe to take on this task. Seeing he seemed a bit arrogant when his secretary refused to accept the invitation to meet, he didn't pick up the phone, so Zoe decided to send an email to him. After a long time without a response from him, Zoe sent him a long message as eloquent poem. Iki-young also did not keep quiet. He responded to her with beautiful words. The two of them enthusiastically started the extended version typing battle by tapping away at their keyboards. Both of them tirelessly engaged in heated verbal battles without knowing who the other person was. Feeling unbearable, Zoe took the hospital address and drove to there to find him. On the other hand, Iki-young felt angry and drove car to her office. They drove quickly like racers. Iki-young went straight in and required to meet the director and the girl Zoe to tell about why she scolded and cursed him. He requested everyone to give him a sincere apology. Zoe arrived and only then knew that the doctor had gone to find her. Not knowing what to do next, then suddenly a song became the first top trending. Remembered the appointment with the guy on the island. Joey gave up combat to come to the meeting place. At Iki-young's place, he had just seen the news and was about to leave, but he didn't intend to go there to meet her. Thinking carefully, Iki-young finally decided to go to the fish market because of the reputation of a gentleman. You hesitated and went to find her or came back. Then suddenly I saw the familiar figure of someone smiling happily by the fish pond. Then they decided to have dinner together. Instead of following Iki-young to eat at a restaurant at home, Zoe chose a small and beautiful little shop in the market to buy a lunchbox to eat for dinner. Then two of them went up to the rooftop of a tall building to both eat and admire the city at night. Feeling that just one bento box was not enough, Iki-young glanced over at Zoe's bowl. He distracted her and then ate up her lunchbox without leaving any piece. Zoe felt both annoyed and also amused. Then she took him to eat the second dinner. Based on his own experience and practical experience to read the patient's psychology, Iki-young could guess that the view from the rooftop in this restaurant was where she used to go with someone special. Knowing that, it was not the person who cheated on her, but rather her first love of 6 years. On a beautiful day, he sent a message to say that he must study abroad, which meant that they had broken up until now. At late night, everyone came back home. Before greeting each other, Zoe told Hee-kyung that it would be better not to meet again. They said goodbye quietly. The next morning, Zoe overslept and was late for work. Luckily, my friend's partner came up with a new excuse for cheating by his ex-boyfriend, so Zoe could get no punishment from her director. On the contrary, her director was embraced in an unusual way. Today, Zoe was determined to catch the psychiatrist who combated with her, so she moved to his place. Unfortunately, Hee-kyung had just left when Zoe arrived, so they missed each other. When Zoe came to the office and couldn't find anyone, she quickly spotted the address written on the note. Zoe acted as a detective to meet him. But the problem here was that Google Maps only showed 2 places with the same name, so she didn't know where to go first. In the meantime, Hee-kyung had just arrived at the meeting place. This was also where his first love broke up with him. How coincidentally the patient he met again was her. She used a fake name to make an appointment because she was afraid he would refuse. And not only that, she wanted to get back with him. Hee-kyung spoke to her just in 10 minutes, not wanting to hear her speak anymore, so he stood up and went into the restroom. Just as I stood up, Zoe came looking for a while but didn't see anyone. She has just left the restaurant when Hee-kyung came back to the table, so they didn't meet each other. Zoe's stomach was hungry, so she went to the convenience store to buy some food. While she was planning to go home and eat, she heard her mother say that she was at her aunt's place because she caught her father with another strange woman. She didn't have any place to come back, but she also met her first love again in the lonely winter sky. When seeing his face, I just wanted to slap it once. But the nobility did not allow her to do that. Zoe was so gentle that she only scolded me a little, from geometry to arithmetic. SH insulted him and then left afterwards. Today everything seemed to be against her. Her stomach was growling and she remembered there was a meal voucher, but there was traffic jam. She hurried to come and eat, but there was no more space for her. Just as Hee-kyung had an appointment there, they met each other again, but both of them only exchanged greetings. He left my hand held her back, and that person was Hee-kyung. Meeting for the first time was their mistake, but meeting each other again was definitely the destiny. They'd had dinner together 3 times. But neither knew the other's name or that the person they're each seeking to confront was the same person they've been meeting. Both of them were carefree to tell each other about the person they confronted through email. Then the story of first love wanted to come back, and how to overcome the scene carrying a freezing heart and a cold soul. When greeting each other was still the previous saying, this would be the last time they met each other. Whether they can have it or not, it depended on their character. Every time she drank a little alcohol, it seemed like the next day Zoe would wake up late and be late for work. Luckily, it was due to Heartbreak that could still be used. The director told you to quickly brush her teeth and wash her face before meeting her. Zoe still didn't understand what happened until she saw her first love sitting in the director's room. The director wanted Jae-hyuk and Zoe to work together on the medical report program instead of inviting Hee-kyung. When Zoe agreed, she set a condition that if she couldn't invite Hee-kyung within 2 days, she would cancel the program. It would be better not to do that project than to collaborate with Jae-hyuk. She said it angrily and went back to her working desk to plan for her strategy. Zoe changed the interface and then returned to the hospital to find Dr. investing like that and failing right from the first step because Hee-kyung didn't want to meet. I really didn't want to see her face, even just once. Afterwards she returned to the company. The director persuaded her to give up inviting Hee-kyung and decided to collaborate with Jae-hyuk. If possible, go back to him, then take the initiative and kick him out. To escape from the sadness of past unrequited love, Zoe refused afterwards. Because she didn't want to see his face anymore. Because she was so depressed she decided to drink a couple of drinks. How did fate bring her back to meet Hee-kyung? Remembered when she said if she met, act like they didn't know each other, then run away and disappeared. The next morning, Zoe appeared in front of the hospital door to find someone, but unluckily, she was disappointed to hear the assistant said that he had gone away for business. She also wanted to wait for him, but she only could helplessly return home. Just outside the door, she saw Jae-hyuk standing and waiting for her. Tomorrow would be his birthday party, so he wanted to invite her. He had also reserved a table in advance, seeing that he was also pitiful, so she agreed to go with him. In the meantime, at Hee-kyung's place, he went to work early and saw his first love waiting for him. She tried to attach emotions, but always get ignored by him. So much frustration, but unable to do anything. She begged him to have a dinner with her regardless of whether Hee-kyung agreed or not. How coincidentally they ended up in the same restaurant. The Zoe couple was on the lower floor while Hee-kyung was on the upper. It was just that Hee-kyung hesitated outside and didn't want to come in. Zoe arrived, but when she entered the restroom, she decided to leave first. She walked alone, walked without knowing where she was going. Finally, she saw Hee-kyung in front and felt too many coincidences here. 2 of them decided to have dinner together. Just having dinner, but they still needed to agree on a few things. As agreed, when shall we meet and how to get in touch later. More importantly, be forbidden to fall in love each other. After saying goodbye, Zoe planned to leave but forgot the things she left at the restaurant, so she boldly asked Hee-kyung to bring them back. She got off the car and then he noticed the ring dropped back on the car. But since he didn't see Zoe anywhere, he had to keep it and pay later. The next day at work, Zoe found that she had been added to a public group chat with colleagues for dinner. However, there was no message inviting her to eat, so she kept staring at her phone all day. Hae Kyung was currently typing to look for high-quality restaurants. When concentrating intensely, the assistant came in and bothered, and he quickly turned off. The assistant knew what he was looking for, so he suggested a few places that were delicious, attractive, and could win the hearts of beautiful women. Indeed, Hae Kyung invited Zoe to eat grilled pork belly, which she really liked. She was so joyful, but when Zihyuk came out and she then immediately lost her mood. Zoe agreed to work on the program, but only within the limits of the assigned tasks. As for her private matter, she didn't want to come back to him. That evening, just as Zoe had finished grilling a batch of meat, her mother arrived at her house. Not only her, but also Zihyuk brought her to the door. Just entering the house, she declared that she would divorce because her husband was having an affair. Then she turned to advise her daughter to try loving her first love again. Hearing his name, Zoe, made him go crazy and angry, so he stormed out. I didn't know where to go, then I met a homeless uncle who was familiar with her. Since she needed someone to drink with, Zoe invited him to have a few drinks. After drinking excessively, Zoe then called her boss, who was also the manager of a mobile banking service, to come and pay for bills. When the boss saw Zoe's homeless man, she was startled, because Zoe had previously bought the uncle some food before. Seeing the severe atmosphere, he left afterwards. The boss then told Zoe she should not meet the uncle anymore, but Zoe did not obey. Well, she didn't need anything and still had to pay money. Zoe walked home and unexpectedly met two people. He gave her the ring that she had dropped. Since she looked a bit drunk, he decided to take her home for a while. But since it was agreed not to disclose personal information, he decided not to after all. The next evening, the two of them agreed to eat dinner together. Hae Kyung just found out a restaurant's an acquaintance, so he took her there. Zoe ate like that, and Hae Kyung did the same. Pick up each piece of hot meat and put it into a roll, then put the whole roll into the mouth. Only by doing so can one fully appreciate the delicious taste of the meat. There was often a program to perform a game and receive gifts. Since she liked penguin toys, so she decided to join in. She took on the role of a strong woman and then punched hard to win the first place, just thinking she would win, but suddenly he stepped out and broke her record. At that moment, everyone was standing still to give way for Hae Kyung. He walked out like a god. He took off his clothes, started to play and then showed off his skills to win an additional prize. They laughed together and jumped up. While celebrating, the assistant called him to go to Nolan's place because she was having trouble. Her mother, who has been out of contact, has been committing fraud, so they went to Nolan's gym to cause trouble. He decisively pulled her out of the crowd with his physically flawless body. After taking Nolan home, he did not stay any longer, but came back to find Zoe. The girl drank all the fermented rice water on her own. Now she stood unsteadily and fell into his arms. Zoe was overwhelmed for a while by her first love, and then she also fainted. He took her home and saw his mother in front of the door. In the past, she abandoned Hae Kyung, so he has not forgiven her yet. He hastily made an excuse that Zoe was his girlfriend and left first. His mother gave Zoe a book that she wrote. The two of them arrived back at the front door. At this point, the young woman had already been sleeping for quite a long time. Fortunately, she could still wake up and get out of the car. Zoe grabbed the penguin toy and then went home to sleep through the night until morning. She remembered what they did made she feel embarrassed. On a day when going to work, she could only think about what happened last night. Who would have thought that just by reading a book, she could imagine the scene when having a date dinner with a friend. It was surprising that Hae Kyung also invited Zoe to go out for a meal at the right time. They were a little embarrassed because of the drunken incident yesterday, but quickly returned to the dining atmosphere. Since Hae Kyung was talking about how fish are nutritious, and then further discussed how eating fish is good. Today, Hae Kyung earned from his experience, and only ordered one bottle of wine so as not to be drunk as he did the previous day. Afterwards, they went home. Lately, Zoe seemed to be more cheerful than ever before. After waking up, she was still singing and then going to work. When I arrived at the company, she enthusiastically bought coffee for everyone. Just in the morning, the whole group was already immersed in a drama. Nolan was caught up in a rumor because of her mother's work. That meant the program that was going to work with her needed to reconsider. Do-Hai and Jae-hyuk came to find Nolan because they believed they could solve this matter. They still wanted to cooperate to get 1 million likes. Nolan arranged a meeting to persuade Hae Kyung cooperate with Zoe to implement the program together. But he still refused to cooperate. More importantly, I still couldn't forgive her for abandoning me before. A new day comes. On a beautiful sunny day, Seo-ja invited Zoe to go camping, but she arrived at the place. She left Zoe alone, because yesterday Seo-ja secretly took the phone and texted Hae Kyung to meet him here. Since her friend had good intentions, Zoe had to accept that, but it was so strange. There were many very intimate couples here, which made them feel a bit awkward. The sun just went down, they started grilling meat. Zoe didn't pay attention, causing her dress to catch fire and burst into flames. Quickly, Hae Kyung took off his jacket and covered Zoe with it. Under the influence force, they fell on top of each other. Fortunately, the fire had been extinguished, but Hae Kyung also almost suffered a herniated disc. Zoe went inside the tent to change clothes. The phone kept ringing because Jae-hyuk was calling, but she didn't bother to pay attention. She went out and saw the piece of meat was burnt black. Luckily, there were still other dishes. The procedure before eating for every girl was to take a few photos. Seeing it was nice, Hae Kyung also took out his phone. The weather was a bit chilly, but with the fireplace and the grill, it was simply wonderful. Adding a little red wine was heavenly delicious, but Hee-kyung drove a car, so he just smelt. The atmosphere was cheerful, but suddenly Zoe said that they should stop preparing dinner together, because she was afraid they would go beyond the limits. After saying that, she felt a bit embarrassed, so she ran into the tent to calm down. The phone rang for a while because Jae Hyuk was calling, but she didn't pick up. He saw her shouting out loud. When Hee-kyung asked, Zoe teased him, saying she encountered a snake, making him jump up on the chair since there was a warning sign here. Jae Hyuk kept calling non-stop, so Zoe finally answered, as if to tell him not to call her or ask her anything. She said that and then hung up the phone, came back to where Hee-kyung was. He felt that Zoe wanted to say something. Coincidentally, Hee-kyung also wanted to hear, so he confided a little with her. As it got late, they packed up their belongings. Zoe wondered why he had never shared anything about himself. Hee-kyung smiled lightly and replied that the writer Zoe admired was actually his mother. He also didn't mind mentioning his first love who wanted to get back together with him, but Hee-kyung didn't want to redo the things that had happened before, as he believed the outcome would be the same. Jae Hyuk had been waiting for a long time before finally seeing Zoe return home. Although she persistently refused, Jae Hyuk still tried to hold her back. Suddenly, a voice called out, telling him to let go of Zoe. She also boldly introduced him as her current boyfriend, so that Jae Hyuk would give up pursuing her. After saying that, Hee-kyung took Zoe away from there. I bought a bottle of cold water to apply to the wound on her hand. The next day at work, Jae Hyuk went to meet Do-hae. Handing over the wedding invitation was just an excuse, just he wanted to ask her about the man from yesterday. Zoe replied shortly that the man was her new boyfriend, and then walked out. She returned to brainstorm ideas for the upcoming program with No-eun, and they didn't finish work until late at night. When she came out, No-eun invited her to have dinner with him. Hearing from No-eun, Zoe learned that the person named Hee-kyung was No-eun's ex-boyfriend. So they had discussed about him back and forth. When she saw the photo, Zoe was completely shocked, because it was the same person who had always had dinner with her. Zoe went into the restroom with a troubled state of mind, thought about it for a while, and then came back out. Who would have thought that No-eun had also invited Hee-kyung to come and introduce to Zoe? In the end, the plan to leave was still the best option. Zoe covertly hid her face and slipped out, then asked her friend to bring her bag out for her. Then afterwards, who would have thought that Hee-kyung would leave as well? Zoe quickly hid behind a photo and sneaked away, running right afterwards. Now she felt troubled. Not only was her anonymous friend actually Hee-kyung, but he was also the person that No-eun loved. And on top of that, he was also Zoe's close friend. To keep her mind off it, Zoe went home and enthusiastically started typing on her computer. She wanted to focus on work, but it didn't take effect. She just still thought about Hee-kyung. The next morning when she went to work, she didn't have any energy or vitality at all. She also didn't have the mood to do anything. The director called Zoe over and asked her about the homeless uncle, as she had been unable to find him for the past few days. During that time, Hee-kyung had not been in contact with Zoe for several days, making him think that she had an accident, was kidnapped, or caught in a fire. While he was thinking to send her a message or not, he received a text message from her asking to meet, as she had a few things to talk with him. Hee-kyung sped over to where Zoe was, and when he saw her, she seemed a bit tense. Afterwards, he went straight to the point. Zoe wanted to end the ambiguous relationship between them. After saying that, Zoe immediately stood up and left. When Zoe got downstairs, she saw the director standing in front of the convenience store. Seeing her, she knew what happened. After having a few drinks, Do-hae told the director about the recent events. As she was telling the story, Do-hae cried and looked very distressed. After that day, they came back to their regular daily lives, just without each other anymore. Do-hae attended the wedding of her seniors. After the ceremony was over, she left immediately. More surprisingly, Hee-kyung was standing to wait for her at the old place. He handed Zoe his business card and told her that if she wanted to get in touch with him, she could use it. He stood from the morning to wait her. He wanted to get to know her again from the beginning, but Zoe acted coldly and didn't want to continue, as she was afraid she would like him more. Finally, she still ran back to her room and cried alone, though she had refused him. Feeling extremely sad, the director still invited her to go shopping. But she didn't have any mood for that. Zoe got dressed in a depressed manner and followed the director around the supermarket, but her mood was still bad. Whenever she felt down, food console herself, so Zoe loaded up a whole bunch of items into her fridge. After going shopping, Zoe realized the business card had somehow gone missing, and while she was a bit regretful, she decided to let it go. She felt that it was better that way since she wouldn't think about it anymore. Not only her, Hee-kyung also felt restless. Not only that, he must deal with a difficult case. The patient he dealt with today was Jae Hyuk. But it was also thanks to Jae Hyuk that Hee-kyung knew that he had dinner with him with Zoe. He also insisted on staking his claim, asserting that he would do anything to get Zoe. Next up was Zoe. She had just bought many foods to soothe her broken heart. On eating, Zoe wondered how Jae Hyuk had found out that she had lied about having a new boyfriend. Just as she was pondering, the homeless man appeared with a completely new appearance. It sounded quite strange that the homeless uncle could know Zoe's inner thoughts and feelings. Without saying another word, Zoe hurriedly made her way back home, looking at the usual alley where there was usually someone, but now it was completely empty, making me feel a little disappointed. Zoe just passed by when Hee-kyung arrived. He thought she hadn't come back, so he stood waiting. He had still waited for her for a long time. The next day, a very special someone came to find Hae Kyung. He was in fact the homeless uncle, who was also an old senior colleague of Hae Kyung's that he had not seen in years. He wanted to remind him to be very careful with Jae-hyuk, since he was an extremely dangerous person. Meanwhile, Do-hae's collaboration program started filming. Jae-hyuk caused the light in the room become loose and the screws to fall down. Zoe hurriedly rushed over to push Na-eun out. Jae-hyuk also quickly rushed to block for both of them. Because of that, he got injured in the arm. Na-eun was unconscious and was taken to the emergency room, receiving news that Hae Kyung came to see how the situation was. Accidentally running into Zoe, it made them feel awkward. As soon as Na-eun regained consciousness, she hugged Hae Kyung. Seeing this, Zoe decided to give them space instead. Hae Kyung hurriedly chased after her and warned her to be careful of Jae-hyuk because he was dangerous. However, she still couldn't anticipate what would happen, so she answered and then left afterwards. Just far away a little bit, then Jae-hyuk drove to make an excuse of his hand injury to ask her to take him back. Not only that, he wanted to eat dinner at Zoe's house. When I arrived at the director's house, she came to see if Zoe was okay. Afterwards, she left away. On the other hand, Hae Kyung stayed all night to take care of Na-eun. In the morning, she was discharged from the hospital due to nutritional imbalance, so she asked him to take her out for a meal. When taking her home, Hae Kyung didn't hesitate to tell her directly that he no longer had feelings for her. He didn't hate her anymore. Seeing Na-eun burst into tears as she got out of the car, he could only walk over and apologize. She felt absolutely disappointed after hearing him. Hae Kyung then drove straight to the studio to accept an invitation to participate in Zoe's show. Not just he wanted, but he missed her instead. He gathered all the courage he had to confess that he really liked her. Suddenly being confessed about his feeling, she felt stunned and stood in shock for quite a while. It came as a surprise to her. They went out for dinner together. Zoe was still unsure of her own feelings, so she didn't know what to say to him. After all, her previous relationships had made her lose faith in love. Hae Kyung, however, didn't want to give up easily. So, until she agreed, he would hold on to her and not let go. Seeing the bandage on Zoe's hand fall off, he gently replaced it with a new one and gave her a whole box to change if needed. Do-hae took the box. Seeing the man in front of her made her feel even more unsure of what to do. Once she got home, she couldn't sleep at all. Looking at the bandage made her feel awkward. At Hae Kyung's place, he couldn't sleep, so he opened Do-hae's program to watch and laughed like a fool. The next afternoon, Zoe-in was called into the office to talk to the manager privately. The issue that your ex-boyfriend or ex-girlfriend had sounds quite interesting. But if the girl messed it up because of personal issues, she better watch out with the director. No matter what, she didn't want her to be hurt. When saying about that, it's sad, so the two sisters go out together to eat crispy and tender pork in their mouths. Just went to have lunch with the director, and when she came out and saw Jae-hyuk waiting outside to invite her to the hospital with him. After the examination, the two waited for the car outside the hospital. Jae-hyuk begged Joe-hee to come back and love him. He explained that his mother was sick, so she left without saying a word. However, the answer that Jae-hyuk received from Joe-hee left him utterly disappointed. Zoe's heart at this moment truly no longer held any feelings for him anymore. She had forgotten everything about him. Zoe said, and then got on the bus and left Jae-hyuk alone behind. Hae Kyung was more cheerful than usual here. Seeing him like that, the assistant felt curious about him, but he didn't respond anything to him. Suddenly, Na-eun came and told him to contact his mother before it's too late. After she left, he felt really confused. After getting the information, Hae Kyung also went to the hospital to visit his mother. The doctor told him that his mother had late-stage stomach cancer, but she hadn't told him. Although he was still angry with my mother, in times like this, he should still meet her to ask why she hid her illness from on. She still tried to pretend that she was fine. She also deeply regretted that she was somewhat indifferent to him in the past. She wanted to cook meals for him after being discharged from the hospital. Hae Kyung couldn't hold back her tears. She walked out of the hospital room in so much pain that she sat down on the ground and burst into loud sobs. The heart kept hurting until it choked. Hae Kyung visited his father's grave. Before he died, his father said that he shouldn't be angry with mom too much and he couldn't do it. Now, he didn't know what to do next. That day, Hae Kyung was sitting alone, dazed, when Na-eun came over to him. He told her that he would participate in the program with Joe-hee because he had feelings for her. Unable to accept the fact that the person she loved was her senior, Na-eun ran to find Joe-hee to talk to her. It seemed like the atmosphere was not pleasant. By the way, Na-eun would like to excuse herself from attending the meeting this afternoon. Until now, Hae Kyung had cancelled all of today's schedule to go to Joe-hee's place. He felt full of energy and quickly jumped into his car to rush over to meet Joe-hee. Joe-hee came down to the lobby to wait for Hae Kyung, as she was worried he might not find the office, and then they went upstairs together. When they met Jae-hyuk outside, he asked to join their meeting. Suddenly three of them sat together and found it a bit strange, because anyway both of them were paying attention to the same person. Fortunately, nothing happened during the meeting. Hae Kyung even invited everyone out to eat, took the opportunity of this first-time meeting. During that time, the director came to find the homeless uncle. After a period of diligently meeting, she wanted him to end her single life. You gave him 10 seconds to think, but by the 8th second, he immediately answered, "Go back to where the children." Jae-hyuk called Na-eun to join the fun. There were too many romantic rivals at the meal, so the atmosphere was quite tense. The whole group was making snarky comments at each other. making the conversation not very compatible with each other's taste. As soon as Gungwoo arrived, before he could even join the group, Jae-hyuk pulled him aside to talk to him privately. The two of them were cousins, so he wanted Zoe to keep this a secret. He didn't want Joe-hee to know about his background or his current circumstances. Up until now, she always assumed that Jae-hyuk was a poor student. Plus, his parents would never accept a daughter-in-law with a normal background like hers. But unfortunately, Zoe accidentally overheard the secret. Zoe gently slapped him and then left him behind, all alone. Then, Jae-hyuk felt very sad. Joe-hee now felt a bit let down as she walked down the street. It was raining outside like rain in her heart. Hae-kyung appeared, used his coat to shelter her from the rain, and then took Joe-hee back to his own home. Because she hadn't had a chance to eat anything, he showed off a few skills to show his cooking ability. Above all, hot food could soothe a wounded soul. Today, Hae-kyung wanted to tell Joe-hee something about himself. Since childhood, he was always alone because his father was sick and always stayed at the hospital. He was accustomed to eating a meal alone. Having had his first love helped him realize that eating together with someone was truly important. Until that 8-year relationship ended, he had promised himself not to be close to anyone. Also, he wouldn't fall in love with anyone else anymore, but he even became close with someone whose name you didn't even know. He always looked forward to her and now he gradually liked her all the time. He gently slipped his hands over Joe-hee's shoulders for her to lean on his shoulder. Joe-hee felt that something was off, but she still let it be that way. No matter what, love must be spoken just like hunger must be fed. In fact, Joe-hee has surpassed the boundary between friendship and love a long time ago. Hae-kyung also knew that Joe-hee fell in love with him for a long time. Just he had pretended to wait for this moment. The food was cold so Hae-kyung reheated it. Because food could always soothe heart that felt sad. When they talked warmly and romantically, they suddenly realized that it was already late at night. It was time to take her home. Hae-kyung intentionally took hold of her hand. It felt like being young again, didn't it? There was a bit of shyness mixed with some excitement. When Joe-hee got home, she took out the photos and videos related to him and looked at them, smiling to herself. It was not just her, but Hae-kyung was also immersed in a passionate love. The next morning, Hae-kyung got dressed eagerly and went to work. He admired in the mirror for a while before finally arriving at work. The assistant was so helpless because it was clear that the day before, he still criticized Joe-hee for low quality, but now he still fell in love with her. Moreover, it was even right in the office kitchen. He barely asked a question when Hae-kyung abruptly and mercilessly dismissed him out the door. During that time, the company director came to the convenience store looking for her uncle, but couldn't find him anywhere, but he intentionally avoided her and hid in a corner. At Joe-hee's place, it was even more deceitful because Jae-hyuk automatically withdrew from the program. This was quite fun for Joe-hee, but the right now problem was to find a replacement. Just mentioned here, the director had already returned. The director called her to come to her place right away. Since unable to find the lover, she was a little upset. Joe-hee kept teasing and making me even more annoyed. No one would come in later. He wanted the program to be on deadline. She deliberately mentioned the relationship between Joe-hee and Jae-hyuk to encourage the girl to continue collaborating with her ex-lover. On the other hand, Jae-hyuk could not accept that he officially lost chance to come back with Joe-hee. Jae-hyuk took his brother to drink wine together. He constantly told old stories in the past. One sentence loves Joe-hee, 2 sentences still love Joe-hee. He also really wanted to lift his spirits, so he asked his younger brother to meet with Hae-kyung there. Jae-hyuk was so drunk that he couldn't stand properly, but he still tried to keep Hae-kyung with him for a few more drinks. Then suddenly it turned into a beer and wine battle. Both of them competed to down one full glass after another. Jae-hyuk was so exhausted that he lay down on the ground, while Hae-kyung helplessly walked away. The next day, Hae-kyung arrived at the filming location early, but Joe-hee didn't care because she didn't want to publicly announce our relationship. She was afraid that her personal matters would affect everyone. She deliberately passed through the room to cheer him up. The live stream started. There were quite a lot of comments saying that Na-eun and I were a couple, but Hae-kyung declared that he already had a girlfriend. Then he saw Joe-hee before starting the program. Na-eun still had no intention of giving up on him, so she asked some tricky questions to handle the situation. Then their old relationship was revealed. Although it made Hae-kyung difficult to handle, the heart rate increased dramatically. At the end of the live stream, the couple planned to visit Hae-kyung's mother at the hospital, but they ran into Jae-hyuk. He wanted to tell Joe-hee that he would go back to the US, so he persuaded her to give him the second chance. Joe-hee responded to him and then returned to Hae-kyung's place. But they were slower than Na-eun since she wanted to persuade Hae-kyung's mother. Na-eun often came here to meet her. She still tried to pretend that she knew Hae-kyung's mother very well. Never mind, Hae-kyung still brought his girlfriend home. Thought I was invited to the late-night dining room, but who would have thought Joe-hee would take him to the convenience store to eat noodles? Accidentally, they saw the director and the homeless uncle being affectionate with each other. Suddenly, while the scene was intense, the two of them came out and disrupted everything. Hae-kyung saw that it was his older brother, so he immediately started talking privately. My older brother told Hae-kyung about Jae-hyuk. He used to be his patient. Since he was young he has been severely lacking in affection. That's why he was stubborn and had a very strong disorder. The most stubborn thing about him was Joe-hee. He would only reveal it here, and leave the rest for Hae-kyung to handle on his own. Then they returned to 2 women to invite them to drink wine together. But the older couple wanted to have private space, so the younger one knew. Before leaving, Hee-kyung hugged and kissed Joey, then kissed her on the forehead before saying goodbye to her. The atmosphere was quite strange during the second live stream, as today Jae-hyuk also joined that day. No one continued to deliberately act like she understood Hee-kyung, just to irritate Joey. Jae-hyuk knew he was allergic to strawberries, but he still tried to eat them to mess with Joey's mind. Feeling that, she hurriedly jumped into his arms to prevent again. The live stream suddenly became chaotic. Everyone also frantically rushed to take Jae-hyuk to the hospital. Seeing the photo taken together of the two people, Nolan deliberately brought it to return to Hee-kyung to contribute to the cracking of their relationship. The director called Joey into the room. After this incident, she doesn't want the four of them to work on a project together anymore. It was better to open a live stream to apologize and then stop it. Joey has talked to Jae-hyuk. He said that after the program ends, he would return to the USA. The director also felt relieved after hearing, it is best to just leave it as it is. Joey took a deep breath and called Hee-kyung to meet him after handling the matter ly zong and se toi tim. It was surprising that in Jae-hyuk's place, he told the two staff members not to take him to the hospital because he was fine again, after saying Hyuk left as if nothing had happened. There were no symptoms of any health problems. He finished her work and rushed to her boyfriend's place for dinner. Suddenly, she wanted to order to eat noodles, but Hee-kyung didn't want to eat, but Joey wanted to, so he could only listen. Joey was afraid he would think about the earlier incident. Since then, she dared not look into Hee-kyung's eyes. He said to Joey that it's okay. Just hold his hand when things got tough in the future. She asked Hee-kyung about his thoughts on the program. If he found it difficult, she would stop it. Hee-kyung immediately replied arrogantly that he was fine. He didn't want to affect Joey because of himself, but later on, he regretted talking like that. She shouldn't have pretended to be okay earlier, so now he felt a little uncomfortable. Another day came to life. Jae-hyuk ran to find Joey. But when he saw her running back to the homeless uncle's place, he realized that was the psychiatrist who treated him. Also the person he had caused great harm to. Just because that time he reported false news about him, it caused him to be misunderstood and led to his career downfall. A few days of my uncle's disappearance, Joe-hee happily went to work. In the afternoon, the man dressed up and went to find the director to make the staff unbelievable that HSE was no longer single in a short time. After finishing the chaotic program of Joey team, the silly little ones were taken by director to play a survival fighting game for a meal to relieve stress. The whole group divided into two teams, lined up for a mock shooting, and used to tease each other. Running a long distance was too tiring, then go inside the house to prepare food. No one stood outside, so Hee-kyung took out the medicine box to check if she was okay, but what she needed was his answer. It was true that Hyuk really loved her before. He was also deeply hurt. But now it was all over. He let Nolan lean on his shoulder to encourage her, which Joe-hee happened to see by chance. It was also time to leave for work, so Hyuk and his assistant left first. Seeing these two people greeting each other like that, it was understood that they were dating. In the evening, the team of youngsters gathered to play Pran. Joe-hee just started the game when her boyfriend texted her, telling her not to drink and then go out. Because he was afraid she would be sad about the hug, he came back to explain. Although he could not consider the past that had never happened, he would try to cherish the present of both. He swore, he promised, he guaranteed that he only loved Joe-hee, soothed with kisses exchanged between each other. Joe-hee warmed up the relationship and then saw him off in the car before returning. The next morning, the uncle came to find Jae-hyuk. As soon as he saw him, he stole and ran away. He had to chase after Jae-hyuk for a long time before he stopped to talk. He wanted Jae-hyuk to tell the truth. Because Jae-hyuk reported false news, it caused his uncle to be misunderstood as a doctor harming patients. Both his career and family had been destroyed. He wanted Jae-hyuk to correct his mistake, but Jae-hyuk refused because of his career. He was also very helpless, so he just mentioned a few words and left. Meanwhile, at Joey's place, she was getting ready to watch a movie at home. Everything was ready, yet the doctor was still overwhelmed with work. Joe-hee played alone and then fell asleep and forgot everything. It was late, so Hyun took Joey home. When she returned home, she found that someone had completely ransacked her house. She called Hyun for him to come back while she prepared a frying pan in advance to catch him red-handed while he was still busy looting. Seeing the shadow behind the curtain, Joe-hee was about to swing her arm when she realized it was Jae-hyuk. He crawled over, calling for help, with his hands still injured. Jae-hyuk was crying and whimpering that he came to find a photo of the two of them but couldn't find any. There was nothing left about the story of the two existing in this room. Joe-hee made Jae-hyuk sit still and then went out to lie that it was her mother so he could go back without worry. Hee-kyung didn't suspect anymore. He absolutely trusted her, so go ahead first. She will wait until he is driven off, then Joe-hee would go inside to sort this problem. Jae-hyuk cried and told. While waiting, she noticed that the password had not been changed, so he went in because he had a feeling that everything was still the same as before. However, there was nothing left in the house about him that makes his mood unstable. Joe-hee kicked him straight back without mercy. It would be the best to come back to the US and pretend nothing happened. She forbade him from telling about today's events. If he dared to reveal it, she would not leave in peace. Both of them were crying. but Jo-hee tried to wait for him to leave the house before collapsing completely on the floor. Crying tiredly, she complained and went back to her mother's house. Her mother saw their daughter like that and hurriedly comforted and advised her to give Jae-hyuk a chance. But when she heard the girl said that she no longer had any feelings for Jae-hyuk, she hugged her tightly. Hee-kyung returned to Jo-hee's house and waited for a while because he was worried. After receiving her message, he felt relieved and left, but Jo-hee was still confused at the moment. She just sat like that to forget her sadness. The next morning, the whole family had breakfast together. Aunt's mother still kept her intention to divorce. Jo-hee didn't hate her father because of what he had done, but she still decided to support her mother's opinion. Having said that, she packed up and went home. Looking at the mess on the floor made her even more sad. She sat still for a moment, then prepared her things, changed the password outside the door, and then went to work. Hee-kyung waited for her early in the morning to walk to the cafe and have some gossip. Like that, there would be enough energy to resist the deadline. Gun-woo came to find his older brother Jae-hyuk and saw him lying down with his hand injured. It also looked pitiful, so he called Jo-hee, but she had told Gun-woo not to call her anymore due to summer issues related to him. She did not want to respond. Came to Hee-kyung. He was at the hospital with his mother and talking to the doctor about her surgery case. Before entering the operating room, he usually brought porridge. My mother really wanted to hear those two calling her mom for once, but she knew that it was impossible. So she told you that when the surgery was done, you should bring Jo-hee here to play with her. Came back to the room. Today, Dr. Hee-kyung had a special patient, and that was Jo-hee's mother, but he didn't know that. She came to get psychological counseling after her divorce. Bino I bakem thay tom trang tho I my on, but the eloquence of those two was so amazing that it made my mother said that if he was her daughter's lover, she would refuse to let him two be together. Hee-kyung felt that she was very compatible with her and her way of speaking was also extremely interesting. When eating with Jo-hee, he told her about that. Jo-hee did not realize that the person he was talking about was actually her mother. Returning to work, he didn't know what Nolan had done to attract a group of reporters for an interview. Not only that, the content was still the relationship between her and Hee-kyung. The reporter also wanted to interview Jo-hee, but she didn't have time for things like that. She asked Nolan outside to speak clearly once. However, she was a stubborn woman. She was ready to declare war on Jo-hee to protect her love. Although Jo-hee said that she and Hee-kyung were seriously dating. After that, she came back to work. Gun-woo had held Jo-hee back to tell her about Jae-hyuk. His father was rightly a rich man and his mom was a normal guy. She gave up both her job and her family to chase for love. But time has changed. Even though he was his son, Jae-hyuk was still not accepted and was kicked out. These things affected Jae-hyuk so much. Gun-woo said that Jo-hee only knew that Jae-hyuk had come to see Hee-kyung. At this moment, between the two men, Jae-hyuk was also telling Hee-kyung the tragic story of his life. He did not forget to mention Jo-hee. Hee-kyung wanted to find another doctor for Jae-hyuk, but Jae-hyuk refused. He told Hee-kyung about the incident of him entering Jo-hee's house without permission at night. Again, Jae-hyuk provoked him with a statement that hit straight into his psyche. He did not forget to emphasize that Jo-hee would protect himself. Jae-hyuk made Hee-kyung become very angry. Jae-hyuk was dragged outside by Hee-kyung. Just as Jo-hee arrived, he immediately tried to pretend that he had just been bullied, made her to misunderstand. At the right time, when a patient had difficulty breathing, Hee-kyung had to come and help her first. Jo-hee silently pulled Jae-hyuk away from there. Both of them jumped into a taxi and arrived to the nearest police station. Jo-hee stopped the car, sat down on the ground, and bursted into tears, not for any other reason but due to her current situation. Staying calm again, she called Gun-woo to come to her place immediately to take Hyuk somewhere else. He gently reminded him that if he showed up in front of her one more time, then she would report him for stalking and intruding into her private home. After saying that, she let the two men sort it out themselves, and then came home. Meanwhile, Hee-kyung was still going around finding her everywhere but couldn't find her. He went over to the office but she wasn't there either. Hearing advice from the director, he could only turn back. Gun-woo called to tell him about what happened earlier. But he could not know where Jo-hee was. Feeling completely helpless, he went back and waited for her downstairs. The uncle saw that his younger brother was worried, so he had a few drinks with him. While they were at it, he listened to the younger man's heartfelt sharing. Jo-hee went for a walk by herself, just kept walking and walking. When she returned, she found him drunk, slumped over the table. She sat down and looked at him and thought. She wasn't sure whether telling him about her past was the right thing to do or not. I didn't know where the two of them would go or where they would come back to. It's unclear what happened after that. Upon waking up, Hee-kyung found himself lying on the seat while the uncle was sleeping next to him. He walked tiredly and stood waiting in front of Jo-hee's house, waiting for her to have breakfast with him. But at this moment, Jo-hee really didn't have enough confidence to sit and eat comfortably with him. Hee-kyung looked tired and went to work. He didn't care about how yesterday's news wow, DB reported. When his patient gave him food, they chewed while tears streamed down his face. In the afternoon, no one came to tell him that she was giving up. She had thought carefully. Continuing on this would only cause more suffering for everyone, so she decided to give up. She would give up these love feelings for him. Jo-hee went home and took her parents to go to the entertainment center to relieve stress, dancing until late at night before returning home. Seeing Hee-kyung waiting for her, she deliberately ignored him. He only wanted to say that he would try to make her feel more comfortable being around him. Tomorrow was his mother's surgery, so Hee-kyung went to the hospital with her. After entering the operating room, my mother asked the nurse to send a letter to you expressing her love for her son. The surgical procedure would last for 3 hours, but the doctor came out quickly. He said sorry to Hee-kyung after leaving the surgery room. His saying was enough for him to understand the situation with his mother. It then devastated him. Tears streamed down his face as he could not accept the reality. When he felt most painful, Jo-hee stepped forward and embraced him. Jo-hee hurried so much that she didn't have time to change clothes, so she took her remaining time to go home and get dressed before the ceremony started. Little did she know she would run into Ji-hyuk right outside the door. He begged her to accept his apology. Ji-hyuk accepted the fact that two of them had truly ended. Jo-hee returned to the funeral home. As soon as he saw her, Hee-kyung became worried that Ji-hyuk would have bad intentions towards her. He asked about her before even taking a breath. The ceremony was arranged and ready. In the afternoon, when Jo-hee went to find Hee-kyung, she found him sleeping tiredly after days of preparing the ceremony. She wanted to cook something for him, but it was her first time doing like that awkwardly. He didn't know what the flavor was like, but Hee-kyung still ate it very heartily. His father once told him when his mother cooked noodles for him. She had never been cooked before, so the flavor was extremely unusual. Before coming to the surgery room, his mother had said that after recovering, she would cook for him. That bowl of noodles reminded him about that. Jo-hee stepped forward and hugged him to comfort. But Jo-hee's cooking skills were truly terrible. In the past few days, his uncle took over the clinic instead of Hee-kyung, so he went there to take a look. Ji-hyuk's condition had also been entrusted to his uncle instead of being treated by Hee-kyung. He was determined to cure his disease. And Jo-hee still stayed at home to wait for him. When she woke up, she found that No-eun came because of hearing the news that his mother passed away. While waiting for Hee-kyung, Jo-hee comforted No-eun's broken heart, as she was pretending to be fine. As soon as he returned, Jo-hee gently reminded him to resolve this final matter. She even pretended to be cool and said she wouldn't be angry, but would go home first. She was still curious about that. Jo-hee stood waiting in front of the door until No-eun came out to come back home afterwards. Hee-kyung understood what she was thinking, so he pulled her inside the house. Just as it was getting tense, Jo-hee got a phone call. Her mother called her to arrive home. It was not really the right time. Jo-hee's short vacation has just ended. She has to continue for work. Not only Jo-hee was overshadowed by love, but the director was also having a passionate relationship with the uncle. Believing that her daughter remained single, her mother forced her to go on a date, instead going with his boyfriend. Since the order from above had banned any argument, Jo-hee could only go to the meeting place. She planned to tell the guy directly that she already had a boyfriend, but Hee-kyung suddenly appeared to say first. He had arrived early to pick her up as well as create a surprise. Luckily, the guy that she met already had a girlfriend, but couldn't tell his family yet. So he planned to agree to go on a date and secretly make an appointment. It turned out that the two big ideas met, as Jo-hee also had the same intention. On the way back home, they encountered Ji-hyuk on the other side. Hee-kyung asked Jo-hee to wait for him so that he could come over there and talk first. She slowly and gently moved forward. He intended to try not to provoke Ji-hyuk, but Ji-hyuk ended up rushing out into the road. Hee-kyung hurriedly chased after and tried to stop him. Just as the car was speeding towards them, he pushed Ji-hyuk out of the way, but got hit by the car himself, covered in blood. Jo-hee ran to catch him. Hee-kyung was taken to the hospital in an unconscious state. He had a successful surgery, but he became conscious until the next day. Luckily, only 2 bones were fractured, while the other parts were still functioning normally. This time really frightened Jo-hee, making her terrified. In another development, Ji-hyuk's father had come to visit him. That day, it was because Ji-hyuk was impatiently wanting his father to recognize him, spread the false information, and then destroyed the homeless uncle's reputation, causing him to lose everything. His father used his power to settle that issue smoothly, and immediately took him to the US.UOI Ka Sang Mai. After all things that happened, Ji-hyuk no longer wanted to be recognized by his father, wanted to sever the father-son relationship with his father. After a few days in the hospital, they were finally able to go home. Jo-hee rushed over to her mother and persuaded her to cook a whole spread of food, but didn't say it was for her boyfriend, because after seeing her daughter fail in love twice, she decided to shave off any strange guy's hair who approached her. That day, Jo-hee had a nightmare. As soon as she woke up, she rode a buffalo to find Hee-kyung and hug him. Even the clothes had not been changed. His accidents made her feel scared. Since she couldn't catch a ride, Jo-hee decided to run for 30 minutes, which made her clothes wet and sticky, so she decided to temporarily wear Hee-kyung's outfit. She helped him change the bandage on the wound. It was strange. Doing it right according to the formula, suddenly being pressed for a kiss. While passionately kissing, suddenly the wound on his body starts to hurt. They had to put out the fire and then go to bed, waiting for Hee-kyung to fall deeply asleep so that Jo-hee could quietly return home. Because he couldn't keep the dating a secret any longer, Hee-kyung decided to introduce himself to his future mother-in-law. The mother was a bit shocked and surprised when she saw him suddenly show up at their house. As they sat down to eat the meal, one could feel the heavy pressure and tension weighing on the young couple, because the mother was allergic to flighty, frivolous guys. And while Hee-kyung was quite handsome and a skilled psychologist with good communication skills, the mother still did not trust him a lot. It meant that she didn't cherish him much, so the two of us have to try hard for a long time. Time passed peacefully until one day, when the uncle and Ji-hyuk returned after a period of treatment for him. Ji-hyuk's mental state was stable again, so the uncle would be returning home for good. The two of them had traveled everywhere and worked many different jobs, and now they were returning. Zoe quickly called her sister to give up the romantic space for them. After a period of trying to win over the mother, Hee-kyung had finally found himself in a fortunate situation. However, the problem was that Zoe was still unwilling to think about getting married. Pushed into such a difficult situation, he decided to seek help from his mother to influence for him. If she didn't, he would end up staying single his whole life. Life was back in that position, but it was happier than before because the director has fallen into love. However, there was still work that needed to be done. These days, Zoe was so busy that she didn't have time to eat out with Hee-kyung, so he brought the food over to her workplace to find her there. Plus, he had to speed up the pace to bring her home as his bride. Who would propose marriage in such an ordinary setting, just while delivering food? This time, if it was wrong, Hee-kyung would do it again. That day, the director suddenly summoned everyone to a special restaurant. A curtain opened. She appeared in a chaotic cage, making the bewildered ones confused. A few seconds later, the uncle emerged along with a bouquet of flowers. The two of them went to register for marriage, so they invited everyone to come and congratulate them. Hee-kyung also had his own plan. He invited Zoe to drive for 2 hours to a remote place to watch the sunset. Under the beauty of the pink sunset, Hee-kyung tenderly expressed her feelings to Zoe. From now on, let's have dinner together every day. Suddenly also wanted to have a lover too. Alright, the movie ended here. Please take 3 seconds to subscribe to our channel to support us. Thank you for watching our channel. See you all in the next movie.